Hello and welcome to the October 21st, 2020 Power Apps Community Call. We're glad you can join us here and thanks for taking time out of your day to be part of this with us today. The Power Apps Community Call is something that we do on the third Wednesday of every single month. So our next call will be on November 18th, 2020. We always do this at 8 a.m. Pacific time. During these calls, we talk about the latest news and community contributions in Power Apps. We have MVPs, product team members, community champions, just basically everybody and anybody who loves and is awesome at Power Apps comes on and shares their knowledge, and we all learn together and really grow as a community as a result. We have technical deep dives, and Q&A is always going on throughout our session. And this is our power crew, as I like to call it. This is all of us who bring this call to you. That's me on the right, Todd Baginski. We also have Charles Sterling. Hey, Chuck, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Todd.
Right on. And we also have Dana and Andrew and Heather and Gabriel. They're all doing something behind the scenes to help produce this and distribute it and get it out to as many people around the world. So we like to say a big thank you to everybody who makes this call happen every month. So what are we talking about this month? This month, we are going to talk about Power Apps charting components for Canviz Power Apps and how you can use these components to make really cool charts in your Power Apps very quickly and easily. Then Reza is going to step up and show us how to do some things with Microsoft Teams integration with Power Apps. He's got a Project Oakdale My Expenses Power App. He's going to walk us through how he built it and show us how it integrates with Teams. Then April and Hugo are going to show us an awesome Power Apps web part, which is very flexible and really allows you to drop Power Apps into Office 365 SharePoint pages. I have a feeling that Hugo may show. Hugo, is it even going to go somewhere else besides a SharePoint page? Can this web part go?
It's got potential. We'll see how much time we have.
All right, it's cool. Like that flexibility. So then we'll wrap up with some news and community contributions as well. Before we get started with the content, we'd always like to give a shout out to these folks right here, as well as everybody else on the call. There are so many people who join this call every single month and spend their time here answering questions and mentoring people in the chat channel. So thank you to all these folks who do that every month. It really makes this call special, and I think everyone really feels connected and like they can come away with something every single month. So that brings us to the charting components. These charting components are something that Matt and myself are going to show you today. And before we get into the demos, I'm going to demo a little bit, and then Matt will too. I'd like to show you where you could get these. And I'm pretty sure Matt's probably going to drop that link right into the chat here anytime. These are open source charting components that you will find on GitHub. And we've been working on these for quite some time. And recently we got them to the point where we were able to get them ready for release to the public. And so I'm going to walk you through them now and show you what's available for you with these charting components. And then Matt's going to take it one step deeper. So as I said, you'll find these in this GitHub repository. And what do the charting components do? Well, this little animated GIF here gives you an idea of the different types of charts that you can create with these components. So you can see there's 8 different types of charts plus a Gantt chart that you can make. Now, the important thing that you'll notice in this repository is that this MS app file, this is actually the chart component that you will import into your Power App to use them. To get started, you click this link down here that says Quick Start, right above the picture. And when you click Quick Start, it's going to open up this documentation that you see right here. So inside of this documentation, we walk you through how to add these charting components to your Power App. And I'm going to show that to you now. And when we're done with this, we're going to have a chart on our Power App in just a matter of like a minute or so and completely configure it and have it ready to go. After I show you how to do that, Matt's going to come back and he's going to show you actually how you do it with dynamic data that comes from different data sources, such as a SharePoint list or an Excel document. The other thing I'd like to point out real quick is in our documentation, you'll find the quick start. You'll find documentation about each type of chart, the various properties you can set on it and what they do. You'll also find how to integrate with data, which Matt is going to show you. A quick walkthrough of the various properties you use to style the chart and the chart axes. So without further ado, let's go now and update this chart. Okay, so what does it look like to get started with these components? First, you open a Power App and you have a blank screen. Then select Components, pick the ellipsis, and hit Import Components. When you do that, you will find in the Quick Start that there is a link right here that tells you how to download the component. So you click that link, pick the download button. Now you have the component on your machine. So as you come back now to your chart, import, upload file, and then here is where you will then go and pick that one that you just downloaded. Here's the one I just downloaded right now. You'll only have one copy. Name that. Hit open. When you hit open, those charts get added right here. So the one called chart can make 8 different types of chart. The one called Gantt only makes a Gantt chart. To add it to your screen, go to the screen you want it on, open the custom section, and drag the chart on. Now that you've dragged the chart onto your screen, what you can do is you can resize that chart to however you like. The type of the chart right here gets set with this property. So this could be pie, scatter, line, bar, etc. Everything but the Gantt. The other properties here are used to set how this chart appears. You can either click on them and set them up on top, or you can go into advanced and set them here. Matt's going to show you how the different color properties are used, but essentially I have 5 different types of data being passed into this sample chart that you get out of the box. You can see those 5 categories here. If I remove the first 5 colors in it, you can see how easy it is to change the color scheme of your chart to something else. Perhaps I'd like to change the title to something a little different. I can make a really great title really quick, like that. And maybe I decide I don't want the subtitle on my chart, so I'll delete it as well. Perhaps I'm looking at the legend of the chart and saying, I wish I would have that in a different spot, or I could affect how that looks. Well, you can do that with the legend property right here. I can turn it on or off too. Let's say I want to move it to the top. I'll just go like that, and now it's at the top of my chart. If I didn't want it, I'll just set this true to false, or I can bring it back. Now when I come to the bottom, there's a couple other options that I can do. Every chart is going to have the name of the chart and then a name of a property of some particular option you can affect about it. In this case, the pie chart is saying the data labels are turned on because this is true. If I make it false, now you can see they disappear. Finally, my data section, which I think is easier to look at in the top up here, looks like this. Data is bound in key value pairs for this particular type of chart. Actually, this is not my data value. Here it is. There it is. So here's the different data that I have in the chart. Obviously, I'm showing you hard-coded data here, which may or may not, probably wouldn't occur in a real-life chart. But as you can see, as I change it, the chart reacts immediately. So what Matt's going to do now is Matt's going to take over where I left off on showing you what these charts get you just out of the box in basic configuration. And he's going to show you how you can take these charts and dial them into dynamic data.
Thanks, Todd. Hi, everybody. So first things first, let's look at what the schema is for a Gantt chart. Let's go ahead and click on the chart, and then we'll click on data. And here we can see what it's looking for. So real simple, we have this property, which right now is just set to a static group of values, as well as the labels. So the legend down here on the bottom right now, the labels on the left-hand row side, And then the meat of the chart, which is the intervals table. And that's just looking for values of start date, end date, color index, which this correlates to the color table of what colors can be used. So the first value in the color table will correlate to this, and as well as the process index, which aligns for which row you want to be on the Gantt chart. So this is the static data, but first, so we're going to be switching it over to dynamic. So let's go ahead and look at my data source. And I have a simple SharePoint list here called project tasks. I have a title row, a start date, and end date, and that's the core of what you need. Now I have a couple other columns, project name and assigned to, because you can really make this dynamic and add a lot more, a lot more options. You have, the sky's the limit, really. So now that we've seen the data source, let's go ahead and let's look at, I'm going to switch Power App screens. And so here we see a Gantt chart with some of my data. So we see the labels and the different days. And so let's go look and find out how to do this. So let's switch over, or let's click on the data property. And actually, it might not be what you expect. So we have this set to a global variable because we are setting this data on the onVisible property. So we'll go to the onVisible property of the screen. And here we are. So first step is to create a collection from our data. So I simple clear collect, name our collection, pull it from our project task lists. If we click on our data connection here, we can see the data connection to this project task list. Let's go ahead and switch back. Okay, so that's step one. And actually, we can go ahead and quickly view the collection project tasks here. So here you can see the collection's been built. Switching back, okay. So next step is, and this was actually an optional thing, I'm using the titles for these tasks on both the legend and the rows. So I just set a variable called titles. I ran a for all function and just collected those. And by doing that, I was able to call this once, and you can see, oops, my bad, that's not what I do. By selecting this, you can just see, okay, so I have a simple value of the titles. So the next is formatting the data into the schema of the table. So I have this wrapped in a global variable, but what we need here is, so then you just assign the legends to our titles variable, which is the table, and same thing for this CLabels property, and then the intervals. So again, I do a for all function for all items in our project task collection, and then I just assign the start property with my start date column, end date, the color index, and process, which in this case, there's multiple ways to do this, but I just grabbed the ID of each row in the collection and set that, so that's unique and changing each time. A couple other things I did which were to make it additionally dynamic was the Gantt chart has a default start and end date to show the range, and I didn't want that to be set to a hard-coded value, so I set a variable of today and formatted it to be a short date format because that's what the schema is looking for. And I also made another variable called var 3 months, and basically same type of thing, but I used the data add function and added 90 days. So each time we're looking at the chart, I'm going to see from today in the next 90 days rather. So let's go back to the chart for a second and check out the options. And in the options for this chart, this is where I have plugged in those optional dynamic pieces. So for Gantt start date, I have my var today, and for Gantt end date, I have my var 3 months. And there's lots of other options, which again are clearly outlined in our documentation. And that's how this chart gets built. All right, so that's how easy it is to connect to a SharePoint data source.
That's really
we might
cool,
have
Matt.
Thanks. I think we have another example here, just a similar example, and this is all outlined in our, we take you through this. This is connecting to a Excel sheet. And over here in the data, we can see we have a movies Excel spreadsheet in our OneDrive location. And so we go ahead and just get our data from Excel that populates a collection of movies and votes. And then we just bind that data to the table. We can see how easy easy that is. So again, same type of method that you've seen before. We are setting a global variable. Again, that part is optional, but we are setting the labels for this type of chart, running through and grabbing the genres of our collection. And then this is a key value pair. So the key are our values, and then the votes is the values. And so that you can see how simple it is to make this dynamic. And again, this is our all outline tutorial in our documentation. So that's my part. Todd?
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So one thing, I figured this out in the chat while you were presenting that, Matt, like I didn't even mention like what happens, what is this built on top of? So these are Canvas chart controls. They work in Canvas Power Apps, and the technology under the hood that is drawing the charts here is SVG. And that's why they're responsive in scale and very, very lightweight. I see a question, why is it not in a component library? Quite honestly, it's because we just haven't packaged it in a component library yet, and it's in our component, and we've been really working hard on the documentation recently to release it so people can understand how to pick it up and use it easily. Happy to see it done. If you'd like to help out with it, like we totally encourage contributions on all this. And we really see this and hope that this is like the foundation of an awesome set of charting components for the whole community. I would love to see this grow to dozens of components. And I know that Emmanuel has already said he's got some feedback on a brief glimpse of it on how we could improve passing the data in. And as we all saw with what he can do with components last month, I bet he's got a good idea. Real quick shout out to Emmanuel Gallus, Sancho Harker, Reza Dorrani, David Van Heerden, and all of our teammates at Canviz who gave us feedback on this and help us build it out so we could get it to the point where everyone can use it. We hope you all enjoyed a lot. Okay, let's move on to the next piece of the puzzle here today. And that is my friend down in Texas, Reza. How are you today?
Hello, Todd. I'm doing good. How are you?
Awesome. Doing good. So you're going to talk to us about the Project Oakdale My Expenses Power app today. And I'm lucky I got to see this before. So I can't wait to see what new things you may have added to it since the first time I saw it. So I'll let you take it away from here and show us what you built.
Sure. So hello, everyone. Reza Dorrani here. Today, we're going to talk about Project Oakdale in a very short duration, and then quickly look at a solution that I built for expense reporting and plugged it into the new Project Oakdale platform, which is basically the merger of Microsoft Teams and the Power Platform. So Power Apps, as everyone knows, is the low-code application development platform. You can come here and build a wide variety of apps and connect to n number of data sources. Platform in itself, the Power Platform, comes with a data layer that it exposes, which is called the Common Data Service, which has powerful, rich data types. It's a relational data model, and it's built for scalability. On the other side of the spectrum, in M365, we have Microsoft Teams, which is our hub for teamwork. And in Teams, typically for building applications, you need to probably have more pro dev skills in order to build apps and deploy them into Teams. Now, Power Apps makes that really easy in a low code, no code experience. So would it not be great if we could merge the two together, whereas we can leverage the Power Platform along with the data layer, which is CDS, and have all of that experience directly in Microsoft Teams. And that is exactly what Project Oakdale is. Project Oakdale is the code name for now. This name is going to change in future. Basically, this is a low-code data platform that has been built for your Microsoft Teams. And the way you get started with this is in Microsoft Teams on the left-hand navigation rail. If I head over to those three ellipses, all I have to do is search for the app called Power Apps. And once I have this app, and once I install this app, right here within the context of Microsoft Teams, I get this experience of building apps using Power Apps for Microsoft Teams. And if I head over to the Build tab right here, this will list out all my Microsoft Teams for which I have gone ahead and created an app. Now, in my scenario, of course, we just have 15 minutes, so I'm going to be respectful of that time. I have already gone ahead and created certain artifacts with respect to my Microsoft team. So I have a team here called Playzone. And if I head over to see all, this will list out all the artifacts associated with my Microsoft team. Now, the key thing to understand about Project Oakdale is you can build apps, you can build flows, you can also build chatbots using Power Virtual Agents. And all of these three things can leverage the low-code data platform, which is embedded directly for your team. It's like a light version of CDS. And right here, if I head over to tables, these are all the data tables that I can create within the context of my Microsoft team. And all of this at no additional licensing cost. Your standard Office licenses will give you access to all of this. So for building bots, no premium licensing. For building apps and flows that talk to your data tables embedded in your Microsoft team, no premium licensing required whatsoever. So that's the beauty of Project Oakdale. Now, in my scenario, I would like to demo an application that I built leveraging Project Oakdale. And the idea for this actually came up with one of the templates in Power Apps. So if I head over to Power Apps, and if I go to Home, there is this small little link that is extremely difficult to look at. It's right here. It is called All Templates. And if I head over here, this will list out a lot of the templates that were created by Microsoft for the Power Apps. Now, of course, most of these templates are pretty old and some of the patterns in them are also outdated. So let me warn you before starting to use them. But right here, there is a template called expense reporting. It's called the My Expenses template. And of course, this template, although it says connects to SharePoint, in reality, it does not. It just connects to a very simple Excel file, I believe. And it's just a good starter boilerplate template to get started with. So what I was able to do is I was actually able to leverage this template, enhance it, and use the data platform capabilities in Project Oakdale and come up with an expense reporting solution. So the next step, what I will do is I will go ahead and project my screen from my mobile device. So I will head over to Teams. And right here, I am in the context of Microsoft Teams. Now, leveraging Project Oakdale, you can quickly build apps and push those apps to your teams. So here is my team right here on the top called Playzone. If I head over to my team and if I head over to More on the top right-hand corner, I have my expense reporting app that I built leveraging Oakdale right here in the context of Teams. And if I select this, this will actually go ahead and open up my app right within Microsoft Teams. And this now is my expense reporting application that leverages the data platform which Oakdale provides for my Microsoft team. And this is listing out all my expenses currently. I can categorize my expenses based on the status of the expense, whether they are pending, approved, rejected, or I can see all my expenses in one go. Now let's go ahead and create a new expense. So I'll go ahead and create a new expense. I will call this the community call expense. I can give this a start date and an end date. Notice the usage of the controls and the theming that matches the theming of Microsoft Teams. So I will pick today's date, end date is today's date. I can go ahead and pick a cost center associated with my expense. I will pick Contoso, and I will go ahead and plug in a few commands, and I will click create. Now, the moment I do this, this has gone ahead and created an expense for me in my Oakdale environment. Now, this what you're looking at right now is leveraging the data platform for Teams. And I'm using a lighter version of the data platform, which is CDS, which enables a relational data model. So right here for an expense, I can add multiple line items. So let me go ahead and add a line item. A line item basically is a receipt that I can upload related to my expense. Now, right here in the context of Teams, once again, I can go ahead and upload a receipt. This is using the image data type in Oakdale. So I'll go ahead and say upload a receipt. And because I am on my mobile device, I have the option of opening my camera. So let me go ahead and do this. And right here on my desk, I have a fake receipt that I stole from the web. So this is not me. And I'll go ahead and take a picture. So I've basically right now using my camera just taken the picture of a receipt. And the moment I do this, I'm actually leveraging Azure Cognitive Services now, which calls in the receipt scanning component. And that will go ahead and process the receipt and get the information. So I was just talking to waste time. If you notice right there on the bottom, it gives me the name of the merchant, it gives me the total cost, and it also gives me the transaction date. All of this leveraging Azure Cognitive Services. Next, I can go and pick the category associated with my expense. This is food and beverage. Give a description. So I'll call this a virtual lunch. And then I will click on save. And just like that, I added a line item and related it to the expense. That's the relational data structure right here in action. If you look at my expense at the bottom, if I select the attachment, it will actually open that same image that I just captured right here live. And of course, I can go ahead and add additional receipts related to my expense. And all of these expenses get added up together, and I can see the total expense cost right here. Now, once I'm done with this, I will go ahead and click on the submit button. And the moment I hit submit, what happens now is this data gets recorded, of course. However, at the same time, I'm leveraging Power Automate to start an approval process. So let's go ahead and let's go back to my Teams. Now, what has happened is I went ahead, I created an expense, and I submitted my expense. And the moment I submit my expense, what it does is it basically records it in the system. And based on the cost center, I have dynamically defined my approvers. I will show you how I did that in the data layer when I show you the tables. So right now what's happening is a flow is getting triggered, and that flow is going to send out an adaptive card. Why? Because I want to stay in the context of Teams to my approver dynamically, so my approver can go and approve or decline the request. Now, it takes typically 10 to 15 minutes. So I went and pre-created something. As you can see, here is the adaptive card in action right here. So this is the adaptive card that my approver will receive. And in this adaptive card, I have a link directly to my receipt. And if I select this, this will actually open up that same app in the context of Teams. Well, it's just opening a new tab. And not just that, it will also deep link me directly into that expense item for which I am performing the approval action. And I can see the same details right here. I can look at the user has uploaded. I can see all the details right here. And once I want to take a decision, I can go ahead and either approve this or reject this right here within the context of Teams. And once I click on submit, my approval decision is recorded. All of this information goes back into my data layer, which is my Oakdale platform. That information is recorded there, and the user who created the expense is notified that your expense is currently approved in the system. Now, if I head back as Reza, once again, who is the person who created the expense, and if I head back to the expense reporting app, this time on my browser in Teams, this is the community call prep that I just approved, and this is the approval task right here of $82.98. So you can build apps, you can build flows, you can use the relational data model, but there's more. You can also use Power Virtual Agents to build chatbots, and all of this at no additional cost. So I went ahead and built a chatbot as well that talks to the same data platform. And this bot is something that I can interact with directly in Microsoft Teams. So once again, on my left-hand navigation rail, I have my expense reporting bot. So let me go ahead right here and say hello. I'm going to try and zoom in as well. So I just said hello, and the bot responded with, "Hi Reza, I'm a virtual agent. I can help you with details regarding your expense reports." Now, the bot is contextually aware of the logged in user. So it knows that it's me, Reza Dorrani. And I'm going to say, I need details of my expense report. So I need details around my expense report. It goes ahead and tells me, okay, so what is the status of the expense you're looking out for? Maybe I'm going to say, I am not bothered about the status. Just show me everything related to a status. And the next question is enter the dollar amount. So I'm searching for expenses greater than what? So maybe I'm going to say what, $50. And once I do that, it will go ahead and actually trigger a flow. The flow will query my data source, get that information, pick the data, and post that information back right here to my bot. And as you can see, it's gone ahead and showed me all those expenses that are above $50. And at the same time, because I selected status as all, it's going to show me everything, whether they are rejected or whether they are approved. And in this as well, this is doing the deep linking functionality. So if I pick the Microsoft Ignite related expense that was rejected, if I select this, it will once again open the app and deep link directly and I can see it in action. So you can build bots, you can build flows, you can build apps, all of this at no additional licensing cost directly in the context of Teams. Now, if I head back to my Microsoft Teams and if I head over to Power Apps and if I head over to the Build tab once again, I just want to show you what the backend looks like. So this is my team. And in this team, if I head over to apps, you can build multiple apps per team. So you're not restricted to just building one app. So as you can see right here, I have an expense reporting app. I have a help desk app that I've built for this specific team. If I head over to chatbots, this is going to list out all the chatbots that are associated with this team. If I head over to flows, it's going to list out all the flows. So you can build flows, apps, and bots. The key here is in the tables that I'm leveraging, which is the relational data model that's baked in right here for you in the context of Microsoft Teams. Now, in my scenario, remember, I created expenses, line items. So if I head over to expenses, and if I go to quick edit, they've kind of given a SharePoint-like experience right here, which is very cool. As you can see, this is listing out all the expenses that are being logged in my system. And all that information is right here. And remember, this is a relational data model. So I have related this to other tables. For example, I have a table called line items. This is where all those individual line items are mapped and they are related to an expense. And here is that lookup column, which is a true lookup because it's creating the relationship. Even the receipts that I uploaded, you can see those images right here in the quick edit mode. And finally, I have my third table, which is called cost center. And when the user picks a cost center, when they are creating a receipt, this is where I'm dynamically defining my approvers. So in my scenario, because I picked the cost center as Contoso, James gets the approval action. If I picked it as Microsoft, then Reza would get it. So I can dynamically define my approvers as well and leverage Flow to talk to the same backend data source. So this was all about the expense reporting solution. I think this is something that is pretty cool. And all of this, what I built, by the way, is I built it in 10 hours flat. Why? Because I reused a lot of things. I reused one of the existing templates. I used Project Oakdale, quickly build these tables and create these relationships. Just push my app into Project Oakdale, copy paste stuff in there, and connect things, build a flow, build approvals, and the chatbot experience as you saw it in action. That's it for my demo for today. I hope you guys liked it.
Reza, Daniel had a quick question. He wants to know, yes, could that have been a multi-step approval?
Absolutely, yes. It could have been a multi-step approval process. It could be any kind of approval process you desire. This is Flow. Whatever you can do in Flow, you can do it right here as well. Any other questions?
I think a lot of people are really helping each other in chat with most of the questions right now, Reza. Nothing popping out at me. I like the new things you added to it since I saw it last time. Nice little enhancements there.
It looks really nice.
I would just like to give one shout out, please, from my side. I would like to give a shout out to that API guy, Vivek Bhavishi. There is no AI builder today in Project Oakdale. I really hope it comes in future. Currently, it's not available. So if you noticed when I added my receipt, it went ahead and scanned the receipt for me using the receipt scanning component. All of that, I used one of the videos that Vivek put out and put that in action right here in my app because I just wanted to use the receipt scanning component. So thank you, Vivek.
Nice. Vivek lives in my neck of the woods. He's only about an hour from me. Well, this call doesn't stop today, does it? Non-stop action, non-stop cool things. Next up, we've got the Power Apps web part with April and Hugo. Thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here. Awesome.
How did this
awesome
web part
demo.
come about? Was this from a project that where like a requirement popped up and you went, this is how we can solve it? Or was it more just, hey, let's do this in general to help out the community?
Maybe let Hugo kind of speak to that because obviously he's the one that built this awesome web part. I know that we had kind of been talking about what the current SharePoint web part for Power Apps can do and just some of the gaps that we're looking to fill. And so kind of collaborated with Hugo on that, give some ideas of some things that would be cool to have in it. And he just kind of took it and ran with it to, give back to the community.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see what you both have here. Well, I will let you take it away and show us this cool web part.
All right, awesome. So I kind of want to talk about first, like what do we have today with the current out-of-the-box Power Apps web part for SharePoint? So, if we look here on a SharePoint page, if I want to go and integrate a Power App within this, so I would click on the plus, I would search for a Power Apps web part, add that in here. And then you see the two settings that we have to configure are obviously the link to the Power App. So I want to integrate this timesheet application. So I'm going to copy that URL and I'm going to paste that in there. And really the only thing other than that we can configure is whether or not to show a border. And you'll notice that when I embed this in with that web part, the Power App is really small and I have no control, even though that this is optimized for the tablet and, in the desktop, it takes up so much space when we're using it in the Power Apps portal itself. But when we use it here and embed it in SharePoint, it's just not really optimized, right? It's just pretty small, a little bit hard to see and to work with. So that was one of the first things that with this web part, Hugo helped us address. So if we go and add his new enhanced Power Apps web part, you'll kind of see the difference right off the bat here. So we're going to click add an app. It's going to look similar. And I'm going to add in that same link to the app. And you see when we do that, now that's actually taking up the width of the column that we have here within the SharePoint page. Much easier and more user-friendly to work with. So, this alone to me is a big improvement, just seeing visually like the difference between this small one and this nice, easy to use. Because what it's doing behind the scenes is it's taking the scale that you have of your Power App. So if I go edit this web part and scroll and open up the appearance section, we see that we can control and customize the aspect ratio. So we can either dynamically resize it based off of that aspect ratio, or we can even define a fixed height. So we can come in here and manually say that this should be like 800 pixels high or whatever we need to do. So we have a lot of good control over that when you're trying to embed these Power Apps in your SharePoint pages. So that's the first thing. The next big one though, and the one that really gets me excited, is the dynamic properties capability. So we know like if we're building so Reza just showed us Project Oakdale and all the great functionality we have to create rich Power Apps within teams. And as part of that, we're able to do things like get the context of the team, see like the channel ID and dynamically pass in properties. Well, with the current out-of-the-box SharePoint Power Apps web part, we don't really have that ability within a SharePoint context. We can't pass parameters. So if you wanted to do something like what we have over here, have a SharePoint list of tickets and then be able to click on one and have it show that relevant ticket in your Power App, we can't do that today with the out-of-the-box web part, but we can with Hugo's enhanced web part. So I've actually implemented this here. So if I click on one of these tickets, you have a Power App on the right, and you see it takes me directly to that item. And this is, again, what really gets me excited about this web part. And it's as simple to configure as if we edit this page. I've obviously added his web part on here. And what I did to make this functionality happen is I've expanded out the dynamic properties. And when you click the option here on yes and turn that on to pass dynamic properties, we have these drop downs where we can select the content that we want to pass from. So it knows and is getting the context of every web part that I have on the SharePoint page. So it's going to ask me, okay, do you want to pass in context from this tickets list? So I'm going to select that. And then you can define, well, what are you wanting to pass? So you're wanting to pass a column value, for example, which is what I wanted because I want to pass the ID of the selected item into my Power App. So I'm going to select that column containing the filter value. And then it's going to list out, once you do that, all the columns that you have in there that you're able to pass in. So I just went in and selected the ID column. And then finally, you'll define the parameter name. So this is what Power Apps is going to see to be able to read with the param function and know to get the value. So I'm just going to put that as ID. So from his web part standpoint, that's all I needed to do. Now the rest of the work is on our Power Apps side. So if you passed parameters in your Power Apps before, it's the same concept. So what we're going to do here is back in our app, go to the app on start, and I'll expand this formula bar out. And you see I'm just doing an if, and I'm checking to see if we have a parameter called ID. And if that's not blank, I'm going to set a global variable called selected item ID to whatever that parameter value is. And then I want to navigate directly to my details screen because that's where this information is stored. Back on the details screen, I'm just going to set on the form the selected item property. And I'm going to do a check again to see if that selected item ID is populated or not. Because if it's not, then just get the value from the browse gallery, because I want this to function both ways. I want them to be able to use the application embedded and submit and browse and submit a new item that way. But then if they click on the item, pass the value. So that's what I'm doing here, is use the browse gallery selected if that's blank, but if it's not, look up to our tickets list and find and get the ID with the matching value from our parameter. So you can use this concept for anything that you can imagine here where you want to pass data from one web part to another. The other one, so one of the things, going back to Teams apps, okay, we're able to inherit the theme of your team. Again, within SharePoint, we don't actually have that right now, but thanks to Hugo's enhanced web part, we can now pass in theming elements from your SharePoint site to your Power App. So if we go back into the edit mode of his app and expand out this theme property, you see that we're able to, with this dropdown, see all of the different variants of your SharePoint theme. So if I wanted to use any one of these, like for example, I have body text selected or a button background, I just select those from the option here, and now I'm able to pass those as parameters into my Power App and customize the look and feel. So all you have to do is keep in mind of which one you want to set the color for. So if I want to utilize button background, I'm just going to type that in as my parameter value to look for in the Power App. And it is case sensitive, so make sure that you're aware of what the case is when you're doing this. It even shows like here, so just use the color value param and then the parameter from the theme property that you're wanting to use. So back in the Power App again, if we want to pass these theming elements, we can go into, say, my browse screen and look at this rectangle action bar. And if we go to its fill property, you can just have an if statement. We can check, for example, if I want to get the body text and have that be the fill of this rectangle, we can check if that parameter containing body text is empty. If not, set the color value of whatever that is. Otherwise, just populate it with this blue background. So that's what we're doing there. And we can do that throughout our application, anywhere that you want to define a custom theme to match. And then any time that you were to go in and change your theme, that property would be updated. So I'm just going to republish that. So this is the great thing about his web part, and just lots of possibilities, and it really makes integrating your Power Apps within SharePoint just that much more powerful. And with that, I think I'm going to turn over to Hugo now just to talk a little bit more of, well, how do you actually get his web part installed so you can start using it, and go over a little bit more details there.
Awesome. Thank you, April. So the first thing we would do is to go download the web part. Now, this web part is available as open source. So if you want to, to look at the code yourself and make changes to it, you can absolutely do that in the GitHub repository. But if you don't have what you need to actually build the web part, we've actually created the pre-built version of the web part for you. We've included the URL in the presentation, but if you go to this GitHub repo, which is the SharePoint, the Microsoft SharePoint web parts samples repository, and you go to the enhanced Power Apps web part, you can just download the SPPKG, which is what a SharePoint package is. Once you've downloaded it, you go to your app catalog, or you ask your SharePoint to go to your app catalog on SharePoint. If you don't know how to do that, you go to your SharePoint Admin Center, which is usually your SharePoint tenant-admin.sharepoint.com. And from there, you will go to More Features, and then Apps. And that will take you to the place where you manage your app catalog. Now, if you have never created an app catalog for your SharePoint tenant, clicking on this link here will prompt you to create an app catalog. But if you have an app catalog, it'll actually just take you there. And when you get to the app catalog, you want to go to the library called Apps for SharePoint. And you just want to upload the file that we just downloaded. So I'll just go here. I'll go to my downloads, SPPKG. The first thing you'll notice is it asks for your permission. Now, this web part requires absolutely no permissions whatsoever because it's running in the context of the user. But it's always important when you add custom web parts or custom solutions that you pay attention here to what it says. This is only saying it will go to your SharePoint Online. It's not asking for special permissions or anything like that. Once you have deployed this web part, it should show up here. And that means that now it will be available for people to add it to their site. To add it to your site, you go to any site that you want. So I'll just take the crisis management site here. And you go to your settings, click on Add an App. And if the demo gods are with me, we should now have the React Enhanced Power Apps client-side web part. I know the name is not very fun. It's just the default name that it gives when you add a web part or when you create a new web part. So here it will take a few seconds to add it. And I don't think the page refreshes itself automatically, but if you just kind of refresh this a few times, eventually it will show up. But thankfully, this is like a cooking show. I had prepared things in advance just to make sure. So once the web part has been added to your site, you can just add it now to a page. And just to show you how I would have done that, I would just go here. I would just insert web part. And then if you look at enhanced, there's an enhanced web part here. And this is the part that you've already seen April demonstrate. But some of the things that I wanted to show you that are also available here, and April did a great job at demonstrating the concept of the dynamic properties, but there are a lot of dynamic properties that are available to you. And it's worthwhile exploring that. We have a few more minutes, so let me just show you. So the first thing here is when you select, yes, I want to pass dynamic properties as a parameter, it asks you what you want the source to be. And the default source that April used was a web part on the page, which was this web part here. If you have multiple web parts on a page, you can actually connect these web parts together or have one web part connect to multiple other web parts, which makes it great because you can do a master detail kind of look. But if you click on page environment, which is the environment or the information about the page in which this web part is running, it actually extracts other things, including things like the site properties, which would be things like the URL of the site, the name of the site, the classification, the title, description, and so on and so forth, which you can use. So you can actually have different flavors of the same Power app depending on where it's attached from. The current user information is also available, so you can leverage that to take advantage of things like username, email, or login name. And one of the cool ones is the query string. So the query string allows you to, whatever URL will be called when you display the page, whatever comes after the question mark here will be available as a query string parameter. So if you click on query parameters, now here you see by default the page just says mode equals edit. So the only property that should be available here is mode. But if I change the mode here, see, it'll already pass the edit property. So if you wanted to add more things, you can create URLs here and add more parameters in here. Again, it's a great way to do this. And then the search, this is great. If you actually embed a search web part into the page, you can take advantage of the search properties to actually retrieve the information. So in this case, the only thing that would be available is the search query. But now that would allow you to actually have a page in SharePoint that can search the search results from SharePoint and also do a search result from your Power App environment. All right, so just one last thing that I wanted to point out here is that there's always this one parameter that we pass all the time, which is the locale information. So you can actually create localized versions of your Power App apps. So if you want to have a different Power App or different resources that load based on whether the user speaks English or Spanish or French, you can absolutely do that. That's always passed. You just need to use the param locale. That's pretty much it. But wait, if you order now, you can also use your page to embed it in a Teams. right? So this is the same page, and there you go. So I use the same page here, but I embedded it in a Teams environment. So the great thing about this is now you can build something, again, a master detail situation that is using the context of the page, but embedded inside of a Teams. I could remove all the heading and all the stuff and make it really look like it belongs inside of Teams. But that's pretty much it for me. I'm always looking for suggestions on ways to improve. As I was telling April, I've been working on adding the ability for it to list all the apps that you have so you don't have to copy and paste the URL. But I'm looking for more suggestions. So if there's anything you've always wanted the out-of-the-box web part to do, just let me know. And yes, if you order now in the next 30 seconds, we'll also include another web part for you. Thank you, everyone.
Wow. Is there a shipping and handling fee?
Operators are standing by.
So how about we make an Oakdale Power App and we put our charting components in it, and then we stick it on a SharePoint page with your web part. And then we pass in the color scheme of the SharePoint site. When you click on a list item, it gives you a chart that shows the details for that list item, and the chart matches the color scheme of the SharePoint site. So basically, we learned how we could do that exact thing today with like writing hardly any code at all.
We did. It's
That's
very
pretty
Inception-like.
Very cool. Thank you both for sharing that. Let's take it back here and wrap up. I bet you're going to see the downloads in that repo go through the roof in the next week or two. A lot of people here going, what game changer? That's cool.
I hope so.
Yeah. So here are the resources associated with the call. So if you're looking for Hugo's Power Apps web part, there's the link where you can go get that. And this deck will be available after the call as well. And there is where you can also get the expense reporting solution walkthrough and download from Reza. And he also has a playlist in YouTube to get started with building apps, flows, and bots, everything you saw him do today with Project Oakdale as well. So that brings us to the recent news. And Chuck, I believe you're going to cover this for us today. All kinds of exciting things here.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to steal the screen from you, Todd. So right off the bat, we actually called out, me and Todd, 3 of the community samples. And I just want to do a shout out. There are 998. I want to repeat that number again. 998 videos submitted from the community on how to do different things in Power Apps. So, if you actually this week, you could be the lucky number 1,000. I think April will almost assuredly get that just from the number of videos that she's been submitting. Great job for April. The one that I wanted to call out that was really, really good is 3 ways to create custom connectors. So if you're looking at creating custom connectors, go out and check out the Power Addict Maverick and his great video. He actually, tomorrow at the Vancouver user group, he's going to walk through that video if you have any questions for it. The 2 samples that we called out, Todd actually called out the Power Apps alert notification component. That is so cool. That was Deepak, I believe, who did that from our demo extravaganza. Huge shout out to Deepak. And definite and indefinite looping in Power Apps. That was, I think it's actually already got like 4 or 5 kudos. So those are both samples and a video for you to get from the community itself. Great. From my team, tomorrow we've got the Power Platform Community Conference. I think there's a couple people. Geetha's on there. Reza is actually presenting. So it's 24 hours of Power Platform goodness. Also, if you haven't checked out the usage analytics in the ISV Studio, that's actually a blog post that we just did last week. Zankar actually published that. So if you're an ISV and you're actually looking to go out and figure out where are people coming from, what are they doing, how are they using your application, this is a great way for you to look at that data. And then also the Microsoft Applications launch event is actually happening. So I want to give you guys a heads up for that. And then 2 posts that are coming is that if you are using the Power Apps mobile web app, the deep links have already been changed from the Safari links to the Siri links. So just a heads up that blog post is coming. And the other blog post, I've totally forgotten that it was actually coming this week. And You're going to have to probably remind me, Todd. Okay, well, that was it for me. Todd, back to you.
All right. So everybody, again, monitor this hashtag. This is where all cool things related to what we do on this call and other people who do great things in the community share their work. So shout out to all these folks for sharing their work this month.
And next post is the community conference itself. So this is actually you guys presenting in a 24-hour conference. So instead of like Ambassador, which is the Microsoft people, we actually, John Levesque, my peer, my teammate, my friend, my colleague, has actually gone out and picked out the very best of the community. And actually his big effort was going out and constraining it down to the number of people, because he actually could easily do a 5-day conference back to back. So this is the best of, not just simply only the best, but the best of. And that actually starts 9 a.m. tomorrow Eastern time. So it's actually 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it goes all day. If you haven't registered, it's free. Go out and do that. And actually, it's now Watch POPCC. You can still do this, but this will actually force you to do a registration. At this point, you can go out and just go directly to the YouTube link, because that's available on YouTube. Okay, Todd, back to you.
All right. A couple other calls and avenues that you can pursue to learn more about Power Platform, just like this call. The Power Addicts Hangout. This one happens once a month. You can go to wearepoweraddicts.com to learn more about that. Several of the folks who participate in this call are also on that one every month. And in addition to that one, back to Donna and Sarah, they have the LessCodeMorePower video series, and this is much shorter than the Power Addicts Hangout or this call. You'll find these to be 10 to 15-minute discussions with folks from around the world who are great at Power Platform. So if you're looking for shorter content or just even more content about this technology, that's another great place to go look. And finally, we'd both like to say, everybody, thank you for coming on the show today, sharing your expertise, your time. Thanks for everybody in chat. It's such a fun community to be a part of. The recording will be available in the Microsoft 365 YouTube channel very soon. You can follow on Twitter, Microsoft 365 Dev, and you'll get an announcement on when that happens. Our next call is November 18th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And if you go to that aka.ms Power Apps monthly call, you can put this as a recurring series on your calendar. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next month.
And next month, before we finish, next month is going to be really exciting. We have the forum super users. So these are the guys that answer hundreds and hundreds of questions every single month, are going out and doing what they're actually learning from looking at all of your questions in the forums and distilling that up into a single hour. So all the questions, all the support, all the troubleshooting in 1 hour. I highly recommend you actually look at next month's community call. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Reza. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, April. Thank you, Hugo. Thank you, everybody. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.